Hello, Bobby.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. First of all, it's great to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you, obviously not just through our mutual friends or friends. Obviously, I follow you on Instagram. I follow your social media feed, and obviously your mission and all what's going on. But before we go ahead and dive right in, I asked you to bring a certain thing that's kind of nostalgic for you, or something that really means a lot that not a lot of people see or have anymore. So please present.
I'm wearing a Harley Davidson shirt, and this shirt was my dad's. My dad passed away last year, and he ended up giving me his Harley. So I have a
Nice.
1995 Sportster, and 95 was the year I was born too. So just anything like
Ooh.
Harley related, especially if it's something my dad gave to me, like definitely has like a lot of meaning and just like growing up and my life. Um, Yeah, with my dad, which is very brings a lot of joy.
Wow. Well, first off, that is a nice shirt, and I am a fan of Harleys. Me and my cousin Michael are actually, we're really thinking about getting motorcycles and getting bikes because
Nice.
I'm in love. I'm in love with those things,
Yeah,
and these are
it's
no
a lot
less.
of fun.
They are fun, and I think I saw yours on the mini documentary that Adam created, and I that was immediately the thing I kept like going back and forth and like screenshotting because it's such a nice bike.
Thank
Like
you.
it's blue. It has blue on it, right? If I'm not
Yeah,
wrong.
it's like a teal kind of.
Hmm.
It's a very like unique color. I really love the color of it.
Yeah, it's very nice. Well, that is really awesome. Obviously, we'll talk more about that, but this is mine. My old Healy
Oh,
shoe.
nice.
Yeah. I we started spring cleaning at my house, and I was going through my closet because I'm actually moving out in a few months. I'm moving to California, and yeah, I just found these pair of shoes, and I was like, man, I remember when these things ruled the world. Like they ruled the planet. Like, every kid had a pair of Heelys, and in school I'd get in so much trouble because I'd be skating down the halls getting to
Yeah.
class, and they can't take away my shoes because it's like I can't go to a class without shoes on my feet. So they would just have to be like, please don't roll or skate down the halls. And I just remember them being so much fun because I was one of those that liked to push people's buttons. So yeah, these were not only just the coolest thing ever, but they also allowed me to push my teacher's buttons and to see what I can get away with. But yeah, okay. So I read your story. Is very like inspiring and also very just like one of those where you don't hear a lot of people just out of nowhere just get a vision from God, or even people who aren't Christian or Catholic be like what on earth is like has he been smoking? But the really preference is not a lot of people just get an idea to start a nonprofit organization, especially one called You Are Loved, especially nowadays. So I guess how did that all come about?
Yeah. I was kind of like in the process of building my faith. I didn't know much about Christianity. I didn't know much about the Catholic Church. I just like believed in God, and I had like personal prayer and like prayed every day, and I read Psalms here and there because that's the only way I knew how to grow my faith. And it wasn't until someone that I worked with invited me to do Bible study with him that like my understanding of Scripture really started to change, and like I started to read different parts of Scripture besides Psalms. And then he eventually invited me to a conference called Seek. It's a conference by Focus. There's 16,000 people there and 600 priests. It's this 5 day Catholic conference that was, yeah, amazing.
Those are just
And
absolutely nuts. I've personally never been
yeah,
to one because for me that's just too many people. But no, I
yeah,
hear a lot of good things happen at those conferences, whether it be Sikh or I forget the other one. I can't think of it right now. But they're in Ohio, Steubenville. Steubenville. Those are the other
yeah.
ones that I've heard about. But
Yeah, so I went there kind of just like as a non-denominational Christian, not really
okay.
knowing too much about faith, and that conference like showed me the truth, beauty, and goodness of the Catholic Church, and how like all branches of Christianity are great, and because like they're all leading people to Jesus ultimately,
Hmm.
but the Catholic Church has the fullness of truth, because there's ultimately one truth, and everything like leads towards that. And so all the other denominations of Christianity, they're good because they lead people to Jesus, but they're just missing bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And so that like showed me the fullness of the Catholic Church. And while I was there, I had planned on starting a clothing line in the months prior, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really know what to do. And so while I was there, I was praying, and I kind of like surrendered that desire of mine to God and said, okay, I know I feel called to like start this clothing line, but like I don't know what to do. What do you want me to do? I'm like giving this to you. And while I was praying, I had this vision of this girl waking up, and she had makeup smeared under her eyes, and she looked miserable, and she got out of bed and walked into the bathroom and looked in the mirror and looked down at her shirt, and it said, "You are loved." And she smiled. I was like, whoa, that's it. That's what the clothing is going to be. So I went home and came across a verse about love, and it says, it's 1 John 4:16, which says, "We have come to know and believe in the love God has for us. God is love. So whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them." So that showed me the magnitude of that "you are loved" message, that it brings God's presence everywhere it's worn, because God is love. And it's in such like a subtle, like simple manner that regardless of where someone's at in their faith walk, regardless of what anyone believes, it's a message all people can receive, and a message that can touch all people's hearts. And in that moment that they read it, they actually encounter the love of Jesus in that moment. And so it started as a clothing line at first, and that lasted for about a year. I was like photographing models with it to try to market it through social media.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started bringing shirts into a homeless shelter, St. Vincent in Dayton. So I started to like really see the impact that message had on people in there. Um, and I wasn't making really much money from the clothing line in general.
Mm-hmm.
And also my business partner had to back out for just like other things in his life that he had to put priority
Mm-hmm.
towards. And so then I started to like kind of ponder like, okay, is like, where's this going? And that's when I started to discern that it's like God is leading me into making it more of a nonprofit, more of a ministry, and more of a mission to really bring this message into those places of poverty, whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual poverty. And so now the mission and the nonprofit brings that simple message, "You are loved," to the main goal of it is to bring it into homeless shelters, correctional facilities, and to the youth, because all three of those places are places where there's a lot of brokenness and a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people who like really don't see that they're good. They place their identity in their past or their mistakes, or in their like where they're at currently in life, whether it's like with like wealth or whatever it may be. But
Yeah.
like that doesn't define us. Our identity is that we're a child of God and that we're loved, and that love for us doesn't change regardless of where we're at or what we've done. And like what changes is our like openness to have that relationship with God and like be loved and like experience that love.
No, it's something that honestly really, especially now in today's age, that especially not just young people, but homeless people and obviously men and women that are in prison that just need to not just need to hear, but other people need to see, like, these we are just as much as we are loved, they are loved as well. Because I
Yeah.
think, especially like with homeless people, I've come to notice we as normal people who have a home, who have shelter, food, a job, our perception of them is that they are either less than human, or they are simply just something. They are something other than human. I mean to the naked eye, just because you see them, and in a sense, to me, it's almost like your brain cannot process what happens when you lose everything, or suffering from mental health, and being looked at as something less than human. Like your brain just cannot simply just comprehend that. So what we do, we either are afraid, or we act out in fear, and we treat them less than human, whether that is someone that is different, someone in a situation that we're unaware, we have no idea is about, or just someone that has done wrong. Like I had an uncle who unfortunately, was sentenced to jail, and I lost almost 10 years like seeing him, and that perception of me made him think, oh, he's my other uncle because he's my uncle in jail. But that message, and essentially of saying that we are all in God, we are all God's children, and thus we are universally equal, is what ultimately the message I think that we needs to be driven into people, especially is, kids. Kids nowadays, yeah, like for example, I place my identity in through my sports. I was a
Hmm.
football player. I was a boxer. I was a baseball player. That's what I was. And then when you get told, you can't do those things no more, there's of course, okay, what am I now? And of course, you slump through the couple month of depression of going through a cycle of things, and then you got to find something else. But no, it's something that honestly I think needs to be addressed nowadays. But what's it called? I was going through your website, which is actually really good, and I'm going through like the clothing line just so people can see it. So we have a couple T-shirts. This one I'm a big fan of, the crew necks. I might actually get one. $35. That's not bad.
Yeah, the beauty about the this like message, and one of the big reasons we have it on clothing for people to purchase and like to be a part of this mission in that way, is because like everyone that wears one is also like going out on mission everywhere they go,
Hmm.
displaying, like really radiating the love of Christ with them, in everyone they encounter in public.
So essentially, okay, so what I want to ask you is like, obviously, what made you really like push forth, okay, like I guess like making this a nonprofit, and why specifically like in homeless people, people that are in prison or in correctional or juvenile detentions, and of course, obviously, like the youth. Like why
Yeah,
those three specific like groups of people?
yeah, that's a great question. Um, so Seek was the conference I went to in 2019 where I had that original vision. In 2020, I went to a conference called SLS, which is also bifocus, but it's oriented a little bit differently. And while I was there, I was at Adoration, Eucharistic Adoration. And a friend of mine
Explain
told me,
explain. I'm sorry. Explain what Eucharistic adoration is for some people that
so
don't know.
yeah, so in the Catholic Church, we believe that when a priest consecrates the host, which is the bread, like you kind of see in the Last Supper, as I'm sure everybody's familiar with that picture, at the
Hmm.
Last Supper was when Jesus instituted the Eucharist, and which is the body of Christ. And so in a Catholic Mass, when the priest holds the bread up and consecrates the host, we believe it actually becomes the body of Jesus, and he's fully present there in that host, body, blood, soul, and divinity. And so adoration is there's a gold monstrance, with a consecrated host in the middle. So it's time to have adoration for Jesus, to be in the presence of God, in prayer, to encounter his love. And so at this conference, I went to adoration, and a friend of mine before adoration told me to go and ask Jesus a very specific question. And the question I asked him was, Jesus, what specifically is my mission? And three things came almost immediately. And it was to bring love to the homeless, to bring love to correctional facilities, and to bring love to the youth. And as I prayed throughout that holy hour of adoration, I started to like realize why God was calling me into those areas. And it's because like I've experienced life in all three of those areas. I've experienced that like darkness, that brokenness in those areas. There was a time where I didn't really know where to live. There was a time where I was in jail. There was a 5 month period where I was in jail, and that was
Hmm.
actually the very first time I encountered the Word of God. The very first time I started praying,
It was in
and really,
jail.
yeah, it was a really transformative time in my life. And then to the youth, I had a lot of brokenness, just from growing up. And so, yes, right there. That's
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
that's
that's
yeah, that's
monstrous
exactly
of
like what they
Jesus.
look like. Not to like kind of like pause from that, but I remember the first time I went to adoration. I had no idea. Well, I mean, I don't know if you felt the same when you first experienced adoration, but I had no idea what was going on.
Me too.
It
Yeah.
was so it was so weird. It's so weird because you see all these people like putting their hands up to this sun like trophy thingy, and you're like, what are you people doing? Like what? to me like the image that it looked like was like zombies like walking up to like a pile of flesh and what it looked like at first, because I just didn't know I didn't know what was going on, but it's kind of like that, and it wasn't until someone like kind of explained to me like essentially like that piece of bread who we believe is Jesus, right? This is my body, this is my blood. Well, it's blessed, thus saying it is Christ himself, and Christ is like currently present in there. So, and it's just like, oh, so it's like looking at Christ. But and then I really did understand it. But
Yeah, yeah.
so you're in jail, and then you find prayer to the first, so you find prayer for the first time, and you encounter Christ, and so then you're at this so then you're at the conference, and the Lord tells you, okay, I want you to a sense speak to homeless, and of course to those in correctional, because you understand what it's like to be there.
Yeah, yeah. I think like when I was in jail, these three guys came in while I was in there. This is about 7 years ago. This is a while back, way before my like actual conversion to the Catholic faith.
How old are you
Um,
currently?
I turned 26 this month.
Oh wow, you make me feel young. I'm sorry.
No,
Continue.
I joke with my fiance all the time and tell her I'm halfway to 52, just to mess with it.
By the way, I love your fiance. She is a great human being. I had the pleasure of meeting her when I was in Ohio. She's a great human being. I like her a
She
lot.
is.
She's
Thank
very
you.
interesting.
Yeah, she
She's
is.
very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So like what I was saying before about that like time period when I was in jail, these three guys came in and they just started reading scripture and just started telling us about Jesus. And that was the first time I ever found hope in my life. It was the
Mm,
first time I like ever saw that like I wasn't worthless, like my past didn't define me, and
yeah.
like there is like redemption that like God wants to bring into our lives. And so like that like little bit of hope and like just like kind of just affirmation of my dignity um, really transformed my life. And I think like, yeah, just reminding people, especially in those places of brokenness, that they are loved, um, has a powerful effect on me when I feel loved. I think it does like in all of our hearts, because that's
Oh yeah.
ultimately what we all seek is
Well, I
love.
mean,
Because
it's a human feeling that everyone just needs to have. Whether it's, I mean, obviously love, it can affect you in different ways, whether it's attention or just someone just telling you like, hey, everything's gonna be okay. But people need to feel loved. People need to feel cared for. Because I don't think there's a human being on this planet that honestly that doesn't care or need to feel something. Like
yeah.
it's just a human need.
Hmm.
So, okay, so you, so basically you go, well, I kind of try to understand it. Like, first off, we're jumping all over the place here, just in trying to put pieces together. But like, did you grow up? Did you grow up obviously before your dad passed away? And my condolences, obviously.
Thank you.
Um, did you grow up like a believer in God, or did you just were not taught very well, or just didn't know what to think at all?
Yeah, so I was baptized Catholic and went up to age 13. That was, I believe, when I received First Communion.
Hmm.
And then like after that, my parents gave me the choice, like what I want to do from there.
Oh
Because
wow.
like at the time, it wasn't like I didn't want to go to church. I didn't understand church. I didn't ever want to be there. I'd try to sleep through the whole thing. Like after I received First Communion, they kind of like it wasn't something they like made me do, you know.
Yeah.
Rather, it was like I had more of like I think they wanted to make sure like I received Jesus,
Hmm.
um, and like before like yeah, they kind of like eased up on like that being something that like mandatory in my life. And
Yeah.
also like when I was 13, I just like really fell into the world. Like
Yeah.
even like apart from that, that was the first time I had more freedom because I had went into junior high.
Yeah.
And so that's when I'd really just started to fall into sin, in many different ways. And that's what, like, yeah, from 13 to 18, many things happen, including drug addictions,
Yeah.
selling drugs, lots of like just not good things.
Yeah,
Um,
I can heavily relate to those two. Those were the things that I fell in. Not in middle school, but more like in high school. Those were
yeah,
my
it
attachments.
like started in middle school and like really like amped up in high school. And then 18 was when I like ended up getting locked up for 5 months. That's when I first encountered God's love. And then I came out of there and started playing college baseball. And as soon as I got out of jail, I lost my relationship with God. Like I stopped talking, I stopped praying.
Time out. Hold on, you played college baseball?
Yeah, only for a semester.
Oh man, I gotta. Oh, first off, I'm sorry. I love baseball.
Me
Baseball
too.
is my love. That's my passion.
Yeah.
That's my passion. We'll talk about that later. But go ahead. So, okay, so you get out, and so you encounter him in jail by these three gentlemen. You say, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, and then you get out, then you go and play baseball for a semester. So then what? I guess what made you essentially get to we're going to that Sikh conference, or and what made you like then starting to question more about, okay, what is this Jesus and what is this Christianity about? And essentially
Yeah,
what made you
yeah.
there?
So after I got out of jail and started playing baseball, I started hanging out with a girl that I hung out with before I went to jail,
Mm.
who I started drinking with every night. And just, yeah, lack of virtue on both sides. And eventually I stopped playing baseball because I had failed some of my classes in school. And so I stopped going to school,
Mhm.
started working in restaurants. I met a girl at a restaurant that I dated for about 2 years. And with me, yeah, not having a very close relationship with God after I got out of jail, I began to build my entire foundation, my entire life around this girl.
Mhm.
And so we ended up getting an apartment together. And this is the girl I thought I was going to marry. I got this apartment with her. I got a dog with her, and it was like a 1,200 a month apartment, very expensive apartment. And she left 3 months into it. And so
Damn.
when she left, like I ended up living in that apartment by myself, and I got that apartment because it was the one she wanted. I lived
Yeah.
there by myself for like the next 9 months, and I went into this just like this terrible like alcoholic, um, depressed, anxiety filled time of my life. Um, and it wasn't until I moved back in with my family, after that 9 month period, to where I was at dinner with them, and I just broke down crying. And my parents are kind of just like saying like you need to like move forward from this relationship. And that night I like something clicked, and I was like, what am I doing? Like I'm just living, and I'm like working in a restaurant. I'm getting off, I'm getting as drunk as I can and trying to find people to hook up with. And like that's my entire life every single day. And that's
Mhm.
like all I'm doing. And I wasn't living for any purpose or anything. I decided to pray that night for the first time since jail, which was I think 3 years
Mhm.
after that.
Yeah.
And so I just prayed for help and some sort of guidance and direction. And a month later, my mom gave me a necklace that had Jeremiah 29:11 on it, which says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you a future of hope and plans to prosper you." And also, she gave me her old camera. This was for Christmas that she gave me these gifts.
Mhm.
And so the camera, I started going out and taking pictures, because it took my mind off the past. It took my mind off worry about the future. It took my mind off everything. And so I was really
Wow.
inspired and just like started shooting in the city. Um, and a month into it, Local 12 News put me um, on their Instagram. And I was like, whoa,
Wow.
I might be able to actually do something with this.
Yeah, that's
And so
insane.
I thought back, like, where did this come from? I never had an interest in photography or anything. And I remember that prayer, and it made me realize how close God is to us and how he always has his hand out, desiring to like help us and lead us. We just have to humble ourselves enough to come to him and let him lead us. And so that was the beginning again of like kind of me starting to build that prayer life with God. And I started reading Psalms again. And that went on for like about a year and a half until I met Jared, one of my good friends, who invited me to do Bible study. And that was the first thing I had done with someone else that was faith related. And it was a very powerful Bible study that one of the big turning points was the study about the parable Jesus spoke on the Mount. It was the parable of the two men who built their house on a beach. And the wise man built his house on a rock, and when storms came, it stood strong. And then the fool built their house on sand, and when the storms came, it crumbled and washed away. And what the rock is the word of God, and the house is our life, and the storms are when life gets hard or unexpected. And if we build our whole life on the word, which is unchanging, our house will stand strong when life throws things at us. But if we build the house on sand, which is like things of this world, whether it be like our personal desires, whether it be other people, whether it be money, if we build our house on that, all three of those things are constantly changing. And so if we build our whole life on those things that are constantly changing, as soon as life gets hard or unexpected, we're going to crumble. And so that really started to lead me to like build my entire life on the word, which was a big turning point in my life. And then a few months later, he invited me to Seek to that conference. And that was the big, one of the people at Seek, one of the speakers said, you can't be a half disciple. Either you're all in or you're not. And that blew my mind. And that's when I was like, I'm all in.
That's wow. I mean, that verse in the Bible is your life. Like that's you. Like essentially, you had your foundation, your life was built on things of the world, and obviously every time things would get tough, it all get destroyed, where finally, even though it took multiple times and it took multiple things to happen, finally you were able to essentially build the rock and have a firm foundation and ask the right questions and go do the right things, to where now you're confident that when life gets tough, you're gonna be okay. Like, you're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And God damn, man, I love stories like that, man. God, like I'm freaking crying right now a little bit. Like, damn, I love stories like that. I love hearing stories of when the chips are all down and you feel like there's no hope. It's almost like a movie. Like, the chips are all down, there's no hope, like nothing going for you. Then all of a sudden it's like, boom, you snap out and you just turn your life around. And that to me is just like one of those things that I tell people all the time, like hard work, dedication, and focus and belief, whether for you have faith or you don't. If you have belief in yourself that you can do anything, that you can change and turn your life around, then you can do it. And you're like one of those people that are living proof that can happen. It's a redemptive story. And then the great thing about it is the story is not done. I mean, you're only 26 and you have so much more to do. And I can't wait. Like, honestly, I can't wait till I have you on again. And hopefully, like, we're actually face to face, and then we talk about what's going on then, whether it's a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 from now. So first off, man, I commend you for that, because that's not easy to do.
It's definitely through the grace of God. There's a question, or my spiritual director mentioned this the other day, and it was just in like regards to marriage and relationships, because I'm engaged right now, and like he said, it's a healthy question to ask, like, can I actually do this? And the answer is no, like I can't, but like with Jesus I can. And that's like really the answer to like everything in life, because like I really can do nothing
It's
like
like,
by myself.
no.
Like what me living by myself before showed that I'm like a mess by myself. But like Jesus is so good, like he'll even take that mess and like bring glory out of it, because that's just like the good, loving God that he is. He'll take all that messiness in my old life, and if I'm like giving myself to him, he'll use all that for good. There's a verse, Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love God. And that's a verse I place a ton of my trust in, that helps me find peace, that helps me find strength amidst hard times in life, because God is so good that he'll do that. He'll take anything in your life if you like surrender it to him, and he'll use it for good.
Yeah, that's the key word, is if you surrender it to him. The most like powerful thing that someone ever told me is that God cannot move the parked car. That's one of the most powerful things someone ever told me, was that, like, God is infinite, God is almighty, God is all powerful, but if you tell him no, he's gonna obey you. He's gonna say, all right. It's like it's a relationship. It's not a one person relationship. It's a two-part relationship. If you really want change and if you really want to do something, we can't do it on our own. We need Christ in our life, and if we are able to surrender and basically be like, okay, Lord, I need help, and that's when change and that's when things start to happen. But if you're essentially don't want to, if you just want to control, then we're human. Our control is limited. There's only so much we can do because we're not perfect. But if
Yeah.
we give it to Christ, who Christ is essentially perfect, who basically, died, resurrected, and did for our sins, then like basically the simplest way is what we do is impossible, and God can create the impossible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All
Okay,
things are
so
possible with him.
exactly, like I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. But one of the verses actually that I just thought of that I haven't read in quite such a long time. It's the one from Romans, but it's when St. Paul's like preaching about like gosh, I can't think. I'm just paraphrasing and don't, Lord, please don't smite me. But he's basically talking about like suffering. Like we should boast in our suffering, boast in our weaknesses, boast in all the things like happening, because we have the honor and we have the privilege to go to essentially like walk the way Christ did in carrying through the cross. Like we have our own crosses to carry, and what an honor for us to learn from our mistakes, to grow to grow and learn about ourselves and about others, and essentially, to say yes to that challenge of the even though it's going to be hard, I'm glad to essentially have these struggles. Like even though no one will actually ever say that, like no, struggling's great, like no, but you should be honored to do it, because if life were easy, I think everybody would get bored. I don't know if you can agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. There's that suffering is like participating. Because like there is no love without suffering, because love is like self-sacrifice. It's completely selfless. It's the giving of oneself.
Hmm.
And that like takes suffering because we're denying ourselves, you know?
I think that's a big thing that people like really struggle with, and especially struggle with about love, because I think the big thing about love nowadays is when you hear it is just a human emotion. It's a human emotion that's like, oh, when I feel this, it's I love you. When in all reality, it's like I tell people all the time, like when I have friends of mine, it's like, dude, I really do like her. I think I love her. It's like, do you? You just met her. And I have this theory about guys. I have this big thing. It's like we have our God-given brains, and then we have monkey brain. And sometimes when people tell me, "Oh, I think I love her," I'm like, is that you, or is that monkey brain? And monkey brain is stupid. It is the thing that we act on pure animal instinct. We don't actually think about it. We don't process it. We just like attack the gazelle. And I think what people need to really understand, that what love is, it's not just a human emotion. It's not just feeling for something. It's dying to oneself. It's putting others before yourself. It's denying your pleasures, and essentially using your gifts and using what you were given for not just good, but for the good of others and to help. Like denying oneself, I think is true love. And I think that's
Yes.
one of the most important. I think that's one of the most like things that needs to be told about when people talk about love. Is love is not just about feeling. It's not just about, oh, I love this person or I love this thing. It's like, no, love is denying doing that great thing you so like to do, because maybe someone needs your help better than just, I don't know. Like for example, my one of my biggest desires currently is how should I put it? Um, I guess this is kind of hard. Okay, I'm just gonna come out and flat out say it. When I was in high school, I love sex. It's a great feeling. It's the greatest feeling in the world. And of course, when I wanted to say that yes to being a Catholic, I had to really like say to myself, like, look, this is not just a human pleasure thing. It's something essentially that God gave for not just procreation, but also to share with your true significant other. And if you just throw it out there, like essentially throwing out there, like you're just like whatever, then it's like almost like duct tape. It's like you put duct tape on there, and you first you rip it off and it's painful, and you put it back on there and it's not as painful until the point where it doesn't even stick on you. It's like you're wasting such a beautiful thing that God has given you just for your own self. And basically now, obviously now I'm currently in a very good relationship. I'll talk about that when this podcast is over. But like she's so beautiful and she's so gorgeous, and I wish we can have that intimate moment. But she wishes to me, like her wishes are, I would like to wait until we are married. And of course, I tell her, okay, I'm with you on that. My monkey brain is telling me, no, bullshit. I want it now. But I know if I truly love her, not only will I respect her wishes, but I'll also know that you know what, if I truly love this person, that I'm going to deny what I want and what I feel and what I love. So that way, when the time is right, it can be special, and I can truly know that like I truly do love this woman, and I truly do love my life and love the Lord. So I mean, that's something that I think needs to really be emphasized about love is denying yourself, so that way you can truly understand what love is and
Yeah,
sacrifice.
definitely. Yeah, I think yeah, like St. Thomas Aquinas, when he defined love, said to love is to will the good of another. So like love, like you said, isn't an emotion. Like of course we feel great emotions when we experience love. But love itself isn't action, it's an act of the will. It's to will the good of another. And yeah, that's a selfless act.
Don't get me wrong, it's hard. It's really hard.
Hmm.
It's difficult, but then again, you know, like life wasn't supposed to be easy. If it was, then where do I sign up? But nah, no thanks. I like hard things. I like challenges. I'm like you know, I don't know. My favorite thing in the world is when someone tells me no. Someone tells me you can't. That's my favorite thing in the world, when someone tells me no, because it's like, really? All right, well, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you. Like
I
I
think
love.
no's are good sometimes because
Oh, yeah.
God
No,
works through
sometimes
people.
yeah, yeah. Sometimes no's are good. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I'm saying, like, oh, when you can like I currently work for FedEx. I'm a package handler for FedEx, and sometimes my manager, he knows the way I work, so he's like, I bet you can't be done by 8:15. And I'm like, really? We'll be done by 8, and and we'll be done by 7:55.
Like little like motivational challenges.
Yeah, like motivational challenges. That's what I mean. Like
Yeah,
I love when
those are
someone tells
good.
me I can't do something. I look at them and I'm like, really? And I don't know if you've seen the documentary The Last Dance about Michael Jordan. It's like that. Like, and from then on, I took it personally. It's like one of the big memes like going around right now is like, and from then on, I took it personally. But that's always been my thing as a kid. When someone could tell me, like, especially it started like when I was in competitive sports, like in baseball. When someone says, I bet you can't hit past the third baseline, it's like, really? Well, I'm gonna show you. And hit it past the third baseline. And someone's like, I bet you can't never become a pitcher. It's like, really? Okay, I'm gonna show you. I like would practice for hours and hours on end on pitching with my dad, to the point of where I mastered only two pitches, a fastball and a cutter fastball. And I ended up being a great relief pitcher for like almost 7 years. And, that's just how my brain operates. If someone wants to like really like test, like challenge me with motivational things, like, oh, I bet you can't do this, or I'm like, hey, I'm gonna try to I'm gonna try to, I don't know, try to do 1,000 push-ups a week. And if someone tells me 1,000 push-ups, you can't do that in a week, it's like, okay, watch me. I mean, that's just how I am. It's just how I was built, and also how I was raised. Because for me, when I was growing up, my dad, he was very hands-on with things. Like if he wants to teach you something, he shows you once and then he has you do it. And then he's like he's there beside me, but he's always like, okay, I want you to try and get it in one try. And he would always emphasize me with that, whether it's like, digging a hole in the yard, washing the dishes, or helping him fix things on a car, or having to rotate a tire. He's like, I'm always gonna show you once. Let's see if you can do it. And that in a process has like kind of helped me with essentially, being motivated to work hard, motivated to like set goals and challenges, and also motivated to just I guess essentially just not be lazy. Because I see especially my generation, people I've known, everyone wants it now. We want things to happen now. Like, would you say you'd agree? Like, people want things to happen like now.
Yeah, without like working for it.
hmm like a quick fix, like a
Hmm.
quick fix kind of thing. And I just personally don't understand it. I do not understand, you know, like obviously like if you want something, the greatest things I think that when reaching a goal are the struggles, and saying like, man, I had to go through A, B, and C to get to where I'm at. And granted, some people were like, oh, that sucks. It's like, actually no, like A, B, and C is what really helped me not only just achieve that, but I learned so much about myself. Like I think someone once told me is like, know thyself, so that way you can know others and know how to love them. And and I think you don't know truly about yourself until you really test yourself. Test
Yeah,
your limits.
that reminds me of like know thyself and like what you can do. Like know what you can do and like use that to like love others. There's a like um Jesus is like meek and humble of heart, right? And he like
Mhm.
tells our hearts to be the same. And like it's really interesting like what meek means. Because like when they meek a horse, like it's basically like a war horse that is tamed and like under control. So like when they meek a horse, they'll take like this like wild, strong horse and control it to where
Mhm.
it's like tamed, to where it can be like um brought wherever and trained to where like it could attack and be very effective at any point, but it
Mhm.
doesn't. And that's what like Jesus is like he has all this power and can do like anything, but he chose to like serve and like show that power through selfless love. And so like when he calls us to like basically like when we to meet ourselves, it's basically to become like the strongest and greatest we could possibly become, but use that to serve and be humble and like serve, like give of ourselves really. Um, which is like really beautiful. Like
No, it
just the depth
is.
of like his heart in
It's
that way.
it's it's such a trip. Like to me, honestly, whenever I do like get into just thinking about Jesus, like some days I just nonstop think just about Jesus's life, and it mesmerizes me like how like basically he is God. Like he's God in a man walking on earth. And he's here not for people to bow to him. He's here to essentially like bow to not I just want to say bow, but like he wants to wash our feet.
Yeah.
Like he wants to wash our feet. He talks to the lepers. He talks to the quote unquote undesirables of the people in Jerusalem. Like basically the people who are outcasts. He goes to losers. He goes to losers. Like honestly, if I were in back in those days, I'd be one of them damn loser fishermen. Because one, I love to fish. Fishing is so much fun. It gives me peace. But I'd be one of those fishermen that would not know how to count to three. Probably don't know how to read. I'd just be out there fishing all the time. Well, that'd be me. But those are the people that he went to. He went to the fishermen. He went to the tax collectors, the the prostitutes, and all the people who feel like the undesirable outcast, he went to the island of misfit toys. And it's such a, I mean, to me, it's such a boggle to think about, because I think a lot of normal people can relate to being those kind of people. It's like, oh, I always feel like the outcast. Well, it's like the outcast isn't such a bad thing. It's really not, because it makes you special. And not to saying like, oh, that's your identity and what makes you special, but it's like Christ didn't go to the kings. Christ didn't go to those who had money. Who Christ went to those who essentially felt like, you know what, yeah, I'm good. Like I bet I don't know if Peter or and John and all of them ever complained about being a fisherman. I don't think they ever complained in their lives about being a fisherman. Like he went to those who just loved what they did. Well, I'm not sure like everyone loved what they did, like Matthew and all them, but he went to people. It's like, hey, drop your nets and come with me. I'll make you a fisherman, man. Come on. It's like, and not even saying bye to your families, and just like going. And I sometimes like to visualize like scenarios, and I ask myself all the time, if I was like on that boat with Peter and all them, it's like, would I be able to just literally drop my net, get out of my boat, and just go? Not saying bye to my mom, bye to my dad, bye to my brothers or whoever. Just go, just go. It's like, would I be able to just do that? And of course, the quick-minded process is like, oh yeah, of course, if it's Christ. But really, like, actually, like, think about it. If you're in their shoes, and and this guy just comes up to you and be like, you know what, drop everything and follow me, and I'll make you a fisher of man. Would you actually just say yes and just go, or would you honestly have to like really think about it and hesitate of, oh, I don't know?
There was actually a big turning point where I was faced with that question, kind of. When I first was doing photography, like the first year and a half of it, before I met my friend who invited me to the Bible study,
Hmm.
I didn't know much truth on theology of the body.
Yeah.
I didn't know much truth on modesty, and the photography I was shooting was like very risque.
I'm
And
kind of explain theology of the body.
so theology of the body explains the beauty of the human body and its purpose.
Hmm.
Kind of like that we were meant for to procreate
Yeah.
ultimately.
Hmm.
And like our bodies are beautiful. Like God has created beauty in our bodies, and that is good. And the reason that women should value that and like uphold their dignity, that they have that beauty, that one day if they get married, they get to give away as like a gift, like that's like a treasure.
Hmm.
Just as like for men, like we get to give away that gift as well, and we like through that like mutual love of giving, then new life is formed. And so that like the beauty of modesty is like um, acknowledging that beauty, protecting it so people don't objectify it. So
Hmm.
those people themselves, like don't objectify themselves
Hmm.
even, and really upholding that dignity and protecting that beauty. So before I read this book, the book I read was called Theology of the Body in 1 Hour. It's a short book by Jason Everett. It's
Okay.
based on the teachings of St. John Paul II. So at the time, I was shooting very risque work
Okay.
that like revealed a lot because I had never heard any truth on modesty or theology of the body. And then after like I think it was 3 Bible studies in, I asked Jared, and at the time, this is like the holiest man I had ever met in my life. I was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, so what do you think about my photography?" And he had the perfect response of like not correcting me or not like just telling me I was wrong, but rather inviting me into something good. When
Okay.
he said, "Hey, so I know you love what you do, and I think you're very talented, but
Yeah.
I think you could do it better." And he said, "I want you to.
Okay.
I have this book for you, and I think it'd be really helpful." And so he gave me this book, Theology of the Body, and I read it. And this book, Jason Everett, yeah,
Yeah,
that
Jason Everett.
that it's so good.
Yeah.
He
I have to
I
read
read
it.
this book. You should read it. It's
Yeah.
amazing. It blew my mind. After I read this, I realized like I have to stop photographing what I'm photographing. I have to quit. And at the time, I had built like 16,000 followers
Yeah.
from shooting this style of photography. I had been traveling across the
Wow.
US. I had been
Yeah.
published in magazines, and like it was like really like kind of like blowing up. And then all of a sudden I was kind of told like I have to completely stop. And so like
It's
this was terrifying, but I trusted that this was like a sign of God, like he was moving me in a way.
mhm,
And I had no idea what was going to come from that or what I was going to do with photography, because
mhm.
this whole year and a half foundation was built on that.
Yeah.
But I decided to trust it, and I stopped. And I just started shooting portraits, and ended up going to that conference where I received that vision. And yeah, that was a time that I think now looking back is like a time like that when Jesus said like, stop and follow me. And like I'm so glad I made that decision to stop and follow him, because he's drastically transformed my life in the past 2 years in like glorious ways that have brought more fulfillment and joy and also prosperity in my photography than ever would have came if I wouldn't have.
That's amazing. I mean, first off, I've seen your pictures. Your pictures are absolutely fantastic. Like you have
Thank
that
you.
very just keen eye to just like even like I sometimes just go through. I rarely go through Instagram. I honestly think it's a waste of time. I like it's a waste of like 5 minutes of my day. I'd rather be doing something else. But sometimes when I see your posts of either your wedding photography or you and Caitlin, correct? Caitlin?
Yes, yes.
Yes, and some of those I'm just like, wow, like, those are great pictures. And it's just, it honestly just, I like scroll through sometimes all of them or multiple of them, and it's just like, wow, like these are just amazing. Like, damn, I wish I had like that gifted eye, keen, like that gifted like eye to like know where to like take pictures. And obviously, like you're, like I can see why, honestly, your photography, and honestly, not just that. First off, I mean to basically take that risk of being told like, yeah, you're taking pictures of like maybe not the most modest of things, but you could be doing better. And of course, being and then of course shaking the foundation of, but this is what I know to do, and taking that risk. I mean, that takes a lot. So you obviously, it's so far worked out for you. So I mean, obviously keep dropping your nets and keep following the Lord.
Thank you.
All right. So one thing that, since we're touching on theology of the body, is something I really wanted to talk about. But the big issue right now, and especially between men, the issue of pornography. Because as you know, it's literally accessible like pretty much everywhere. And honestly, I don't know if you've kind of noticed it. It's honestly like not just this whole separate thing now. It's now a part of like mainstream media. It's like creeping into mainstream media of where now it's so accessible that now you can literally see like some of these performers on you can literally see them on YouTube and on Instagram and Facebook, like they're just there. And it's literally now in, like, it's so accessible to the point where you don't even have to like go to their videos or their website. You can just see them on regular, like on regular TV or cable. And I just want to know, like, what is your like like, not, I don't want to say stance, but like what's your opinion, I guess, on pornography and the pornography industry.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's very damaging, not only to those involved in that industry, but also those that view it. Um, it was something I struggled with up till before that retreat, that original
Hmm.
retreat, and the Chastity Project, which was started by Jason Everett. I think there was like a little paper I signed just as like a promise kind of to myself, basically kind of like vowing to like never watch pornography or masturbate again, just like a promise to myself to like kind of hold myself accountable. And from like that point on, like me saying like I'm not doing this ever again, and like
Hmm.
sticking to that truth of what I like declared, that helped me conquer it completely, to where I haven't
Hmm.
had a single problem with that since. I think there's a amazing it's a 3-part video series. It's called Brain Heart World, and it kind of really highlights the damages of pornography on the brain, on the heart, and on the world. And it's a secular video, that kind of it's studies by scientists, many different things. We recently watched it here at the chapel, that I come to often, and one of the big things that stood out to me on that is like pornography transforms a certain part of your brain to where it enlarges the part of your brain that desires, that makes decisions off desire, and like
Hmm.
shrinks the part that makes decisions more on prudence, on logic and good decision making. And so when the brain that's like, when the part of your brain is bigger that leads you and leads your heart and mind based on your desires, that ultimately starts to control you, to where your desires control you rather than logical, prudent thinking on what truly is best for you, on what truly is where your heart will receive fulfillment in, which is love, true, authentic love, love from God.
Hmm.
And so I think it's definitely a very like, yeah, prevalent thing in the world right now that many people are fighting. I think, yeah, that's exactly what it is. That is something I would recommend, whether someone struggles with it or doesn't. I would recommend watching that
Okay.
3-part video series. It's very powerful.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, it affects the way you look at people. It affects the way you look at yourself. And it really like leads people astray from seeing people for who they truly are, which is sons and daughters of God.
Hmm. I'm, it's honestly, obviously, this is my biggest problem with me is that I have in a sense like I don't want to say like two brains or like parts A and part B of my brain, but I have like two thoughts. Like one part or the other, I'm like pornography. Yeah, pornography is horrible. Pornography, it can be really bad, and it can essentially alter your thought process to where like it you look at people, and especially you look at women and first men, you look at women in such a different way. Like you look at them like obviously the main thing is to look at them objects, but I think the term that I've come to say when what pornography does to you, you become an animal, is like it turns men into animals, and all you want to do is pounce, and you just want to behave like an animal with women, and you just want to
Yeah.
use them for animalistic pleasure, and that's just honestly this the honest way of saying it is like you just lose morality. You see you just look at them and you view them as like your own like basically the way it is to put it shortly, you use them as your own like sex dummy. That's honestly what it does to you. You look at someone who's beautiful, a woman that is beautiful, and you just look at them and you don't even look her in the eyes and the face. You look at from here to the bottom and to the legs or whatever. It makes you like look at them in ways that's like that's not okay. And you can tell when people like are looking, you can tell like damn, they watch too much porn because they're just like
So
they're
one of the things I wanted to share in regards to that topic is, well, two things really. One is like it comes down to self-mastery, which
mhm
is like a very big key to living a life of greatness.
mhm
Um, and like mastering the desires of the flesh, mastering our senses, to where we can actually live in our calling of greatness, of virtue, because virtue leads to truth, beauty, and goodness, which are the things of heaven, which is what we all desire and are drawn to. The other thing is there's a verse in Ephesians. It's Ephesians 6:12. It says, "For our struggle is not with flesh and blood, but with the principalities, with the powers of the world rulers of this present darkness, with the evil spirits." So our struggles aren't against flesh and blood. Our struggles are with fighting the devil. And every single one of our struggles is with fighting principalities and powers of darkness. So like every single thing in this world, there's no like neutral ground. Like everything is either leading us closer to God or further away from God. And we have to choose to fight to go towards God in our lives, to have that self-mastery, to be able to fight off temptation, to be able to say no, to be able to really drive out the devil and
mhm
rebuke him, and like through Jesus have victory over death, which is sin.
No, I agree. And when I was saying before is that, like I said, I have two sides to the issue. Like obviously I explained one side, but at the other side, I mean, and this might sound wrong to people, but if a pornography is gonna exist, I say if we are gonna have it around, then we should treat it the way we treat alcohol and cigarettes and all that. That you know, even though I mean, it's because at the end of the day, I can't. The way I look at it is that I can't force someone. I can't force someone to say, "Oh, you can't watch that," because they're adults. They're grown adults. You make up your own mind. Of course, if they're a child, then obviously I'm gonna tell them, "Okay, you can't watch that shit. Like, please don't watch that." If it's a child, but if it's a grown adult or someone my age, then it's like, okay, I can't tell you, but here's why it's wrong. But at the end of the day, if you're responsible with it, then I mean,
I don't think there is such thing of responsibility with it because I think it is an ultimate evil because it destroys the dignity of humans, and it also glorifies something. It glorifies sex in a way
mhm,
that isn't what it's meant for. Because
yeah,
sex is meant to be between a married couple. It's meant to be a very private and intimate experience of love that ultimately is experiencing the love of Christ in its fullness that we can experience it on earth.
mhm,
And so there is no like temperate way to approach it. It's it's an evil that's in this world. And
yeah,
yes, we can't tell people like what to do and what not to do. We can encourage them and plant seeds and inspire with
yeah,
moral authority,
mhm,
declaring truth, because that's what we're called to do as Christians, is declare truth, is to have that moral authority, is to lead people. But people do have free will. You are right about that, because God gives us free will,
yeah,
because no love is forced. God wouldn't force us to love him, because
mhm,
that's not love. Love is an act of the will.
yeah,
And so he gives us all free will in order that we may love him
yeah.
and be open to receiving his love.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You're correct. That's what I mean. It's like me personally, if you want my personal opinion on pornography, I'll tell you, look, it's wrong. It does it screws with your brain ultimately, and it screws with what sex is meant for. And especially nowadays in the world, it's such an open thing now that where it's like not like me myself, I'm a private person. And if someone were to ask me of no one's ever asked me, but if someone were to ask me about my sex life, it's like that's none of your business. You have no like that's none of your business to know about what I do with my significant other, in our personal life. First off, I don't like to be personal, and that's why I don't like social media a lot, because I don't need people to be up in my business knowing what I'm doing, where I'm going, what I'm cooking, what I'm taking pictures of. You know, I don't like to do that. That's just how I am, and of course that's me who's starting a podcast. Saying that. but no, I agree with that. It's just one of those things where I struggle with the I struggle with the devil's advocate of the coin, of whether or not, let's like, okay, yeah, I understand why it's evil, but it's like if someone were to it's like someone were to watch it, it's like obviously hate the sin, love the sinner, but at the same time, it's like, is it doing damage to someone where I can clearly tell it, or isn't it? Which probably it is, but then again, I just don't know.
It
But
always
that's
is. And
that's
I think like you are right about love people. And like with like the definition of love to like will the good of another, we'd actually give me 1 second. I think my headphone died. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Now I can't hear you.
It would you can
There, now I can.
okay. Yeah, to with love being to will the good of another, it would actually, and like we us knowing they're good, what is good for them, and us to like not say something is actually not loving them.
hmm No, that's probably something I just need to hear, because yeah, I struggle with that. Like, I really struggle with not saying like telling people like I'm all like I don't go like, for example, if someone is like clearly like doing something they aren't supposed to. I mean, unless it's like clearly like, okay, you're doing something stupid, then I'll say something. But if they're like, if they tell me like, oh yeah, I do this or I do that, it's like instead of telling them no, I ask them why. I ask them why, and unless they tell me, well, why? What do you think about that? I won't say anything because I don't want to judge because I know what it's like to be judged. And I guess the one thing that I'm afraid of is when I tell someone just straight up no, that it sounds very judgmental, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it is important. Something I want to get into, like not like necessarily like immediately correcting the person, but rather inviting them into something that is good. Because like love is kind, love is patient, love is merciful, and
Hmm.
love is like gentle. We to just like say like, hey, you're stupid for doing that. That's not love. But to be like, hey, did you know you're a son of God? Like you have dignity. And like explaining just truth, or like inviting someone to watch that three-part video series, like, hey, do you want to watch this with me? It's very insightful on just like the world of pornography and like how it affects the world.
Hmm.
And, like without like not necessarily immediately like correcting someone or telling them they're wrong, because it's important to let people know that they themselves are good. Maybe their actions are wrong, but you
Hmm.
don't want to say anything in a way that damages their how they look at themselves. Like maybe we should lead them to look at their actions, but we don't want
Yeah.
to do anything that like makes them feel like less of a person, or like less
Yeah.
like a um, child of God. We're ultimately trying to uplift them, to
Hmm.
encourage them to like good things, to step deeper into truth, beauty, and goodness.
Yeah. Most definitely. And I think that's something that I think not just Christians or Catholics struggle with, but I think that's something that all people struggle with is finding the right balance and the right way to to kind of not like change them, but kind of like to like kind of rewire their brain, like thinking, okay, why don't instead of just like just like keep doing it, like ask yourselves why you're doing it, like honestly think about, is this healthy for me? Is this really something I really need in my life, or is this just a necessity that I don't need and it's kind of a little bit unhealthy? I think just finding the right balance of how to make them ask themselves those questions is something that I think it takes one to like really, I don't want to say master, but like find a way to like say it in a way where you're not like hurting them, but in a way of like, hey, let me just let's talk about it. Because I want to know your preferences, your opinions on it. Okay, well, here's my opinions, and just something to think about. You don't at the end of the day, you don't have to do a damn thing I say, but it's just my insight on it. And what do you think?
Yeah,
And
it's good
I
to
think
plant
it,
those seeds.
yeah, exactly, like planting seeds, and that's one of the things, honestly, that is kind of okay, I love planting seeds, but at the same time I'm afraid what happens to those seeds. Like, I don't know if you know this, but I was obviously the way I know Adam is because he served on my net missionary team. For those who don't know, the national evangelization team is based out of St. Paul, Minnesota. And me and him were in that group, and our job was to essentially go to the youth of high school, middle school, or youth of church, or a group in a church, and plant seeds about Christ's love and his forgiveness and A, B, and C and all that. And I would love to do that because the way I approached planting seeds was like, look, you all have your stuff going on. You say, oh I'm too busy to go to church, or hey, I'm too busy to this. So it's like, okay, well, I had those excuses too. I said those same things. I had the same thought process. Yeah, I didn't like going to church. Church to me was boring. Like you said, I would find an excuse to fall asleep in church. It was boring. I didn't want to be there. But then knowing what I'm there for and understanding, like, you know what? Sometimes to me, like, yeah, church isn't fun. But that's what makes it in my heart better, knowing that I'm sacrificing just 1 hour out of the week to go and be in the Lord's house and get to receive Christ Himself, get to receiving Christ Himself in my body, in my flesh, and hearing His word. That to me is what makes that hour of sacrifice worth it. It's essentially you get to learn something more, and you get to receive the greatest gift in all of existence, which is God and Christ himself, but the main thing I would try to implement, like, look, I'm just like you guys. I'm a regular guy. I like video games. I like sports. I watch movies. I'm into cars. I'm into motorcycles. I'm into all this other stuff, and I understand what y'all are going through. But this is the way that I've learned how to live my life and learn it, and all the things that I've learned, use it to the best way to help people. This is an option. This is a way. If you all want to follow that way, go ahead. If not, then well, just know that that Christ still loves you, and you know what? It's like, just do the best you can with what you can. And
Yeah,
sometimes I feel like, okay, I know I did the best I can, but then there's sometimes it's like I get that anxiety and I get that thought of, should I have done more? Could I have done more? Should I have said more? And that's what makes me afraid of, like, did I really do enough to plant those seeds?
yeah. I think that's where that's where trust comes into the picture, and like
Mhm.
trusting that like we're not the ones that like fix people or change people, like God is. We're there to like love people and like plant those seeds and like trust that God will water those seeds at the rate that they need watered in order to grow. Sometimes people will change like that night. Like they'll have a really powerful transformation that day. Sometimes it might be that seed that slowly starts to grow and open them more and more up to the faith over the next couple of years, and like that our peace, like it's is like taking that weight off of ourselves, that it's like our job, because it's like we're called to love and like be that vessel for Christ in that moment to love, but he's ultimately who's going to like transform their hearts, who's going to water those seeds. And like one thing I've had that similar experience, to where like I've had an interaction with someone and then I started to like beat myself up after, like, oh, I said the wrong thing, or like I didn't help them enough, or I didn't love them well enough. But then I like went back to that verse that I shared earlier, Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love God. So God will take that moment, he'll take that experience with that person, and he'll use it for good, because he's good and he loves both people in that scenario.
Mhm. That's something that's really, really powerful, something really good, and something, honestly, I think I need to think more, because sometimes I think about some of those kids that I remember, because I ended up doing 2 years on net. Adam, I met during my second sentence on net. I call it a sentence because it's a rough 9 months when you do that mission organization. But no, there's some of them where I like really think, like, man, did I do enough? Did I think? And I think, yeah, I think I just have to have that trust and have that belief of, no, like, okay, you did what you could, and it's all up to God and it's up to them now. It's like, whatever it is, just know that everything's gonna be okay and everything's gonna work out in some way, hopefully. And I think that's what's the best we can do.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, I've given up. I'm giving up drinking the rest of the time. I think I'm gonna continue with my water.
Mhm.
No, there've been some of these where I've had like 2 3 hour sessions, and I've like done it. I've drank nonstop, and I don't even know how I barely get through it. Oh man, so one thing I didn't know about you is that you're a baseball fan. I did not know that at all.
I do love baseball.
Do you have a team, or are you just more like, you like to play the game?
I love playing. I love playing softball too. When I was growing up, I watched the Reds a lot. I really loved Ken Griffey Jr. I actually got the chance to meet
Yes.
him on the field when I was 8 years old. I got to shake his hand, and
Really?
it was very inspiring.
Oh man, Griffey Jr. is one of my all-time favorite players. Like, that dude was just amazing when he played for Seattle, and of course when he played for the Reds. A lot of people forget that he played for the Reds. Well, because he's from Cincinnati. He's from the Cincinnati area. Ken Griffey is.
Yeah, he went to Moeller. I think there's a field that's not there anymore called Basil. It's in Westchester.
Uh,
He played there, and that was our home field on my baseball team, which was really cool.
that's amazing. Ken Griffey is one of he's just one of those iconic players in baseball. Like you have to put him up there with the Babe Ruth and the Lou Gehrigs
Yeah,
and the Willie
he was
Mays.
amazing.
He's just an incredible athlete. Yeah, I don't know. To me, baseball is just one of those things that'll just never go away. It will always be a part of not just sports history, but American history. Because at the end of it is America's pastime. Like, here's a fun fact. Do you know who the first sports celebrity was in America?
Is it Babe Ruth?
No, well, close, but no. Ty Cobb. Ty
Oh yeah,
Cobb. Ty Cobb was the first actually celebrity. Ty Cobb was like the actual first like celebrity that not other than a politician or a businessman that was, famous in the United States of America. Like presidents used to invite him to the White Houses for parties, hang out with like all these businesses of corporations and he started investing in other things. Like he was the first like big like star in America that wasn't like a politician or a businessman. Like, Ty Cobb was. And then of course the next one that came about was Babe Ruth, obviously. But yeah, so whenever people are like, "Oh, football's the greatest sport ever," I'm like, "Yeah, you're right, but not really. That belongs to baseball. 'Cause baseball had its stars first." Or I was looking up like who has the most like expensive like memorabilia of sports stars. And to some people that I've asked this question, they think like, "Oh, Michael Jordan or I don't know, Troy Aikman or something like that, some football player or golfer or soccer player, whatever." But actually, the memorabilia you can make up the most money off of is off of Babe Ruth.
really?
Yeah, Babe Ruth. Like I don't know if you do you watch the show Pawn Stars like on History Channel?
I actually don't have a TV in my house, believe it or not.
Nice, good. Less of distraction.
I have one, but it's not plugged in.
Oh my god. That's even better. Oh, it's like, no, I don't watch TV. It's like, oh, you don't have a TV. No, I got one. It's just not plugged in. No, yeah, but on this show, it's like it's this famous pawn shop in Las Vegas, and they have some like crazy stuff being pawned for. Like they have some like documents written by a Mark Twain. They have like George Washington's code, and a bunch of like when the World Series rings or Super Bowl rings. Well, somebody brought in like a Babe Ruth rookie baseball card, and literally it sold for like I think $75,000. I could be wrong, but it sold like up to that. Just like a rookie baseball card, $75,000.
Wow.
Paper. Like, that to me is just so insane, but that's how iconic like Babe Ruth is. And honestly, when I was growing up, one of my biggest heroes of all time. Well, first I had two heroes growing up, and that was Batman and Babe Ruth. Those are my two heroes, and it's weird because I'm a Red Sox fan. I can't stand the Yankees. Gross, gross them Yankees. But the reason why Babe Ruth was one of my heroes is because of the movie The Sandlot. I was in love with The Sandlot because that's not to say like that's all me and because I grew up with my cousins a lot. They were like my older brothers, and all we would do every summer or every time like we would have the rest of the day was we'd be outside playing something, whether it's playing baseball, throwing the football, or doing anything. We'd be outside doing that stuff. So kind of like the kids of The Sandlot. And of course, I knew about Babe Ruth from that movie. And then, of course, as a kid, I had a book on Babe Ruth about how he was an orphan in Maryland and how he became the most famous baseball player. And essentially, I was like, man, if Babe Ruth could have no parent, have no family, grow up in a poor part of Maryland, and yet still be the biggest baseball player of all time, why can't I do something with my life? And that's how I looked at Babe Ruth. He has one of my heroes. But that just goes, no, man. But baseball, such a great sport. What position were you in baseball? Like, what was like your, I guess like your place where you're like, that's my spot on the field.
I was a pitcher, and an outfielder.
And I was a pitcher also. Pitching was so much fun. Pitching was great. No, I played in the outfield sometimes, but I preferred, if I had to be other than a pitcher, I prefer to be in the infield. I like to be on first base, just because I don't know, something about diving against ground balls or throwing across the field just did not sound pleasant to me. So it's like, nah, I'd rather be at first base catching everything.
Yeah, yeah. I think first base and catcher and no first base yeah, first base, catcher, and second base were the only positions I didn't play that I wasn't like moved around to.
Well, you don't want to be catcher because that ruins your knees.
Yeah,
And
that
plus, and
sounds
plus,
rough.
yeah, it ruins your knees. And also, man, when you have to make the play at the plate, man, some of those kids, oh, they'll spike you sometimes. They'll spike your knees. Oh, I remember there was a game we were playing. It went into like I think we only played like 7 innings here when we were in Little League, but we went to like 3 innings after the seventh, and the play at home, man, there was a kid on our team, and he was basically he didn't get along with other teams. He was like that one kid, and the play of the game was he slid into the catcher's knee and he spiked him because he legit had like baseball spikes. He had spikes on his cleats, and he spiked him right in his knee, and it's just like ooh, like you can poor kid and the poor catcher, man, he was crying, and we won, but it's like, did you really have to spike him? Well, I wanted to win the game.
I'm
But you
actually leading a Bible study right now that's like it's directed towards athletes and it's really
really
fun. It's titled The Call to Greatness, which is
call
really
to
cool
greatness.
because like
Yeah.
it really dives into like how a
Hmm.
lot of athletes, and I myself included when I was younger, place their identity in their sport. They place
Yeah.
it in their performance. They place it in their success in sports, which could be really like terrible if like what if they start losing or they get hurt to where they can't play sports anymore.
Yeah.
Your whole
And that's
identity
one of the,
based on
those
that.
are the kind of people that I like encounter. Like I talk with a lot of people that are athletes because I one was an athlete. And yeah, no, I do. I know what it's like to like, you put, I guess I never subconsciously did it, but I guess when you dedicate something so much to such a craft and it's everything you do, like go to practice every day, that you become like, oh, I'm a football player, I'm a baseball player, I'm a swimmer. That becomes a part of your identity, and sometimes you don't even know what you're doing. But yeah, there comes a point where sometimes where if you get hurt, then it's like, okay, well now what do I do? Like I've dedicated so much time to this, and I'm told I can't play anymore. Well now what? Or when
Oh,
a lot of us in high school when I played football, it's like, okay, that's it. Some of you are going to get college scholarships and some of you aren't. That's it. The game's over. It's like, okay,
yeah.
well, now what? Now what do we
It's
do?
all about like having Christ at the center of our lives and at our heart in our hearts, like in every single area. That way, no matter what happens in life, we still know our identity. We still know where our strength is, and we still have the courage to get back up and
Hmm.
move forward into greatness. We still believe and have that hope that we can do great things because our identity isn't in some variable of earth. It's in God, who is truth, beauty, and goodness in himself, and who is actually who's going to enable us to have victories in life, to be successful in life.
No, that's some honestly that's a really good way to do a Bible study because I think a lot of athletes, like, especially young athletes, those who aren't going to essentially play the games or play the sports forever, need to be told that like, hey, your identity isn't in what you do. Your identity is who you are and who made you.
Yeah, so there's this like lie that the world teaches of this performance-based mentality. I learned this in the Encounter School of Ministry. um, Performance-based mentality. It's where we think we have to perform and do something in order to gain something, in order to have,
Hmm.
in order to be successful or be good or be loved or seen or known. And so it's this like I do, have, and therefore I am mentality. But that's a lie, and that's what the world tries to teach us. But it's flipped. It's I am, I have, I do. I am a child of God. Therefore,
Hmm.
I have everything I need because I have access to heaven through Jesus.
Hmm.
And therefore, I can do anything and everything I'm called to do through Christ who
Huh.
strengthens me.
Yeah. Wow. I've never thought of it that way. That's one of the first times I've ever seen it that way. Cause yeah, I agree. A lot of times it's I do, I have, and then I am. I've heard it. I'm honestly, and now that I think about it, though, that's just the way. And like I said, I think it's something that we ourselves like don't even realize we're doing, because I think it's the world that, and the example, and like this is my, and I've been saying this for like the past few episodes on this podcast, is that kids now struggle with having heroes and role models. There are no more heroes no more. It's about role modeling. It's about modeling yourself after something that you possibly cannot have. Like for example, a lot of kids' role models are sports stars. Oh, I want to be like LeBron James. Oh, I want to be like Tom Brady. Oh, I want to be like this. It's like, okay, like what do you mean like you want to be like them? Oh, I want to be exactly like them. I want to achieve their stuff. It's like, okay, but what if you don't achieve it? And also, you shouldn't role model after someone you watch on TV. Role model yourself after someone in your home that's good to you, or a great, or someone that really cares about you, or a priest,
Or
or
Jesus.
whoever it is, or Jesus. Role model yourself after Jesus. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 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 But I mean, for those who like may not know Christ, or young kids who don't know Christ, or the Christ doesn't live in their homes, like I mean, role model yourself after someone who looks out for you in the best way possible and does good things. Like that's who be your role models. And heroes should be like athletes. Like man, like Michael Jordan, he was the greatest player ever. I want to achieve great things like that. Or you know what? Batman, man, Batman. You know what? Batman and Superman. A lot of people like Superman because he's an alien and he has superpowers. But man, Batman has no powers and he can still do good things. I can do that. Like there's a difference. Like kids don't have heroes no more. It's now about role models, role models, role models, role models. You know, you got to be like them. You got to be like that. You got to play like this. And it, to some of these kids, it's unfair because it's something that they just cannot perform or cannot do.
Yeah, there's a very profound thing Father Mike Schmidt said. I went to a Cincinnati men's talk, and Father Mike Schmitz was there. I don't know if you've heard of Father Mike Schmitz, but he's amazing.
I've heard of him.
Amazing
He's
speaker.
basically like the one of the most popular priests that like nonstop I hear about.
He's so amazing. I was like 10 feet away from him at this conference, just listening to his talk. And dude, this man has so much, one, humbleness. It's beautiful. Two, just so much like joyful truth to give. And he was talking about how like Jesus is the prototype. Like he's the perfect man. He's who we should strive after to be like. He's
I
who we should
agree.
try to shape every aspect of our lives to be like. And he
Yeah.
also said like this is kind of like for those people that like you're talking about, like kids looking up to somebody, or like people that don't know Jesus. Like for some people, we're the prototype.
Hmm.
And so like are we, and like we're called in those people's lives to be Christ like, to
Hmm.
where Christ can actually use us to love them, to lead them, to protect them. Because as like men, where like true masculinity, this world like definitely has like warped perspectives of what masculinity is. But
Oh,
true masculinity
absolutely.
is we're called to guard, to guide, and to give. And everything else falls under those three categories. Because like if
Hmm.
we're guarding someone's heart from maybe lies from the devil, like you're unworthy, you're like a piece of crap person, or you're a failure. That's not true. And we're called to like guard their hearts by saying you are good, like you're a daughter of God. You are loved. And like you can do all things through Jesus who strengthens you. And like
Hmm.
inspiring them to give is to give of ourselves out of service, whatever it may be. In like a marriage, it's to give of our like whole bodies and our hearts and everything to our wife, and to guide. That's to guide people to the truth. And that's what we're called to do as men.
Hmm. No, that's honestly that's something that's incredibly important. Father Mike Schmitz is honestly one of those guys that dude just knows what he's talking about. Like honestly, like he does. Like I don't watch him like religiously. Like I really don't. Like to me, like the most information I can get is honestly from the Bible. That's like the most I can get. But sometimes if I like really think about something, um, where it's like, okay, what does the church think about it? I either, if I can't figure it out in the catechism, because the catechism sometimes it's even confusing for me, because there's words in there where I'm like, ugh, brain power. I like, I have to look, I like look him up. I look up him or Bishop Barron, because those two are the guys are just incredibly smart, and they know a lot of, obviously they should know a lot about the church because they are priests, but no, I go to them a lot, and they try to like, get an understanding, like, okay, like let me try to understand what the church teaches and what us Catholics and Christians should do, with this topic, or what,
Yeah,
like, with this issue. And he honestly does a good job. I would love to, first I'd love to get him on here. I have to reach out to him. I don't
that'd
know
be
how to reach
awesome.
out to him. That would be awesome. It'd be
That'd be
amazing.
pretty sweet.
Yeah, that would be really cool. But I just, first off, I got to find a way to get a hold of him, which probably have to go digging towards what.
There's another
Yeah.
thing that he said at that speech. It's very profound as well. He was saying, like, how do we like lead people into the church? Or how do we like help people like encounter Christ? And he said like one of the reasons is like one of the ways, like the base ways, like fundamental and generally, is to they have to, in order for them to desire to want to come into the church, they have to like be truly convinced that that I myself like am a significantly better person
Mm-hmm.
being Catholic than I would be if I wasn't. And
Mm-hmm.
that they would too, that they would be a better person, that they would have a better life if they came into the church than they would without it. And then the
Mm-hmm.
other thing, there's three main points he like made on how to like help people, how to love them and lead them into help them come into the church. And it's through prayer and fasting. It's through joyful witness, and it's through invite. So like not through correction, not through like demanding any of that. It's through that joyful witness, like being a good, like a joyful Christian,
Mm-hmm.
um, and through prayer and fasting, praying for them, fasting for them, like suffering in ways that like that you're offering up for them so that they can receive grace in their hearts to be transformed. And then to invite, simple invites, like that man that my friend that invited me into Bible study. That's like he simply invited me to do a once a week Bible study, and that changed my life. And like
Mm-hmm.
those simple invites go a long way.
Oh, most definitely. Hey, man, thank you so much for doing this, man. I really do appreciate it. Like, thank you so much again.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me
Thank
stop.
you for having me on here as well.
Yeah,
Thank you for
no
sharing
problem.
people's lives. It's amazing.